I request others to please mute their mic, or I request Suresh ji to please mute all the participants. Yeah.
Raghavji, over to you.
Yeah.
I think we have started the live streaming and it's in recording.
Yeah.
Co-hosts, any one of you can look at the admit all also, so that you can, as and when they join, you can keep admitting. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Over to you. All the best.
Yeah, thank you. And I request once again, I request all the participants to please mute their audio. Yeah. So we'll begin with a small prayer. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hello everyone. I apologize for my webcam. It seems to be some problem, but my name is Raghavan and I'm a faculty at the Center for Indian Knowledge Systems, Chanakya University. On behalf of the university, I request Rohini. Thank you. On behalf of the university and the center, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Chanakya University is envisioned as a multidisciplinary institution committed unflinchingly to the service of the society through excellence in teaching, development of knowledge, and direct contribution to the world of practice. Embracing the principles of National Education Policy 2020, it aims to create knowledge and transformative leaders for holistic development. The university has also set up a special center for Indian knowledge systems to show its commitment towards responding to the concerns of India and Indian knowledge systems, which will deeply inform all of its knowledge endeavors, including teaching, research, and practice. This is the first public event of the center, and we are considering ourselves very blessed that it should be on such an auspicious occasion. According to our tradition, today is the birthday of one of the greatest thinkers India has produced, Sri Adi Shankaracharya. This profound scholar who flourished in the early 8th century revolutionized the way in which the Upanishads are studied and could be credited with renewing the interest in their study. Without much exaggeration, I think the history of Vedanta in India can neatly be classified as pre-Shankara and post-Shankara. His close and systematic study of texts like Brahma Sutra, Upanishads, and Bhagavad Gita, which are called the Prasthanatrayi Grantha of Vedanta, spawned off several other traditions of Vedanta in the centuries to come. Such is the effect that this great personality had on the intellectual climate of India. The Indian Council of Philosophical Research observes his birthday as Indian Philosophers' Day, or Bharatiya Darshanika Divas. Today, to honor this great Acharya, we are delighted to have with us Ms. Manjushree Hegde, who will be delivering a special lecture titled Upadeasahasri, 1,000 Teachings. Manjushree ji is currently a researcher at IIT Madras. Her primary area of interest is Advaita Vedanta, which she studied traditionally under Brahmashri Ashwathanarayana Avadani. Those of us who know her to be a very passionate researcher of Advaita Vedanta in particular, and also of all things classical in general. In this talk, she will take us through the text Upadeasahasri, which is the only clearly authentic work of Shankaracharya, though many other works are credited to him, and which is not in the form of a commentary, and it is the best introduction to his thought. As our speaker puts it, no other Vedantic text is so accessible and so effective in introducing students to the central issues of Advaita Vedanta. And because he has critiqued other Darshanika traditions in this particular work, it also serves as a very good introduction to the general field of Indian philosophy. I welcome Manjushree ji to the talk. So she will be speaking approximately for 15 minutes or so, after which we can have the small 10-15 minutes for questions or discussion points. And I once again request all the participants to please mute their devices during the talk. Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Manjushree ji.
Thank you so much, Raghavanji, for the introduction, for the warm welcome, and big thank you to the Chanakya University, a very new initiative, a very dedicated team committed to the cause of Indian knowledge traditions. So thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm very happy to be here. My throat is not very good. It's a heads up. I have a throat infection, cold. So please do bear with me if I have a bit of a problem. We're celebrating Shankara Jayanti today. And I've always maintained that the way to truly celebrate this auspicious day is to study, to contemplate, dwell upon at least some portions of Shankaracharya's writings, his works. So towards this end, I thought that I could share some of my own readings of one of his works today, the Upadeasahasri. The Upadeasahasri is interesting for so many reasons. One of them being the fact that this is the only independent text that Shankaracharya has authored. Everything else that he has written is in the form of a commentary, a bhashya, either on the Shruti or the Smriti. Everything is a commentary, barring the Adhyasa Bhashya, of course, which is a magnificent piece of writing, but everything else is a commentary. So what he has to say has to be fitted into what has already been said. So to me, it is interesting to see what he wants to say and how is he going to say what he wants to say when he sets out to write something entirely on his own. So the very simple fact that this is the only independent text that Shankaracharya has authored makes it a very, very interesting read. Another thing that makes it so interesting is the fact that, see, the text is divided into two parts, two sections. One is metrical, Padya Bandha, and the other is prose, Gadya Bandha. 19 chapters in the first part, 3 chapters in the second. What makes it interesting is the fact that the first part, Padya Bandha, is like a textbook for students. It is addressed to students. But the second part, the Gadya Bandha, is like a manual, a handy guide for teachers. How should a teacher, how should an acharya instruct his disciples into Atmavidya? This is the question that Shankaracharya addresses in the second part of the Upadeasahasri. And this is what makes it so interesting. Because in the broad field of Advaita Vedanta studies, there are hundreds of Prakarana Granthas for students. There are hundreds of Vada Granthas that attacking opponents or addressing fellow academicians. But how many texts address teachers? How many texts tell teachers how to make the subject matter interesting, how to make it convincing, or how to ensure that the student is progressing, what to do if he isn't? How many texts deal with such questions? In my admittedly very limited reading, none. And this is what makes the Upadeasahasri very unique, a very exceptional, and a very interesting text, a text that stands as an attestation not only to the genius of Shankaracharya, but also his boundless, limitless compassion. So today, on the occasion of Shankara Jayanti, I thought that we could take the opportunity to acquaint ourselves with this very extraordinary work. I only hope that I do justice to it. I'll share my screen with you. I've prepared a couple of slides, just hopefully that it will make the talk more easier to follow. Let me just share my screen with you. To begin with the structure of the text, like I said before, it is divided into two parts, Padya Bandha and Gadya Bandha. There are 19 chapters in the first. Most of them are very short. They contain 9 shlokas, less than 9 shlokas, sometimes 14, sometimes 4. The last couple of chapters, though, contain about 50, 70 shlokas. And the 18th chapter, the Tattvamasi Prakarana, contains 230 shlokas. It is the longest chapter. It is its philosophical centerpiece. Otherwise, mostly the chapters are short, they're crisp, they're succinct, to the point in the Padyabandha. In the Gadya, you have 3 chapters, equally short, equally crisp. So clearly, Shankaracharya does not like to prevaricate. Of course, this should be quite an obvious fact given how short and how crisp his Adhyasa Bhashya is. It's a tiny work, barely 4 or 5 pages of printed on A4 sheets, but its content is sublime. Philosophically is so profound, so magnificent. I've said this on multiple occasions. If nothing of Shankaracharya's work survived except for this Adhyasa Bhashya, if everything else burned down, that'd be okay. Because everything that he has to say has been said in those pages. It is that spectacular. And it is so short, so short. So clearly, Shankaracharya likes to keep it short, but philosophically very, very profound. Upadeasahasri is also like that. The manuscript traditions indicate that the 2 parts of the Upadeasahasri were treated rather independently, which means that they were studied or commented upon separately, not necessarily as a whole. So you have single chapters, multiple chapters, a few chapters from the first part, a few from the second, selected, copied, studied apart from the rest. So every chapter of the text is sort of like a muktaka, part of a whole, definitely, yes, but also complete in itself. So the reading of the text can literally begin anywhere. Each chapter is complete in itself. So for today, I thought that I could pick a short chapter and discuss it with you, just to give you a taste, a flavor of Shankaracharya's writing, his style, his genius. So I've picked the 5th chapter from the Padyabandha. It has a very curious, a very unusual title. Actually, one of the reasons why I picked this particular chapter, it is called Mutrashanka Prakarana. Mutrashanka Prakarana. Intriguing to say the least. It's a very short chapter. Has only 5 shlokas, but the wide range of topics covered in just those 5 shlokas is supremely impressive. I'll discuss each of the shlokas briefly. We don't have enough time to discuss them at length, but it should be enough to get a broad acquaintance with them. So we can begin. First shloka goes like this. Mutra shanko yathodanko na grahidamritam munihi karmanasha bhayad atmajnana grahastatha. Mutra shanko yathodanko na grahidamritam munihi karmanasha bhayad atmajnana grahastatha. I've put the translation on the PPT. Just as sage Udanka did not accept nectar, mistaking it for urine, Mutra shankaha udankaha na agrahid amritam yatha. So too, people do not accept the knowledge of Atman out of fear that their duties will be destroyed. Karma nasha bhaya jantoho atmajnana agraha. Here, Shankaracharya is referring to a story that occurs in the Ashwamedha Parva of the Mahabharata. A very obscure story, certainly not a popular one. I had to put in considerable effort to discover the source of the story when I first studied the Upadeasahasri. The story goes like this. Muni Udanka, or rather Uttanka, because in the critical edition of the Mahabharata, the name occurs as Uttanka. So Muni Uttanka was a great tapasvi to whom Vishnu granted a Vishvarupa Darshana. Further, Vishnu offered him another boon, Ask whatever you wish for, and it shall be granted. Tamuvacha prasannatma govindo janame jaya varam vrinishveti tada tamuttanko braviditam. So Uttanka asked Vishnu a very simple boon. He asked for water. Toyam ichhami yatreshtam marushvetat dhidurlabham. I desire to have water wherever my wish for it may arise, because water is precious. It is scarce in deserts such as this. So what I want is water whenever, wherever I wish for it. Granted, Vishnu tells him, whenever you wish for water, simply think of me and your thirst will be quenched. Many days later, Uttanka was traveling across the desert and he felt very thirsty. He looked for a source of water, but there was absolutely nothing in sight. Then he remembered Vishnu. He remembered Vishnu's boon granted to him. Eshtavye sati chintyoham. Whenever you want water, think of me. So he did. The moment he thought of Vishnu, he saw a form before him. The form of a naked hunter, a chandala, extremely fierce looking, extremely terrifying, carrying a sword, carrying a bow and arrows, entirely covered with dirt, surrounded by a pack of dogs. He cut a truly hideous figure. And then this chandala began to urinate in front of him. Copious amount of urine flowed from his body. And smilingly, he offered it to Uttanka. Uttanka, do accept this water from me. I feel great compassion for you, tormented as you are with thirst. Uttanka, on his part, angry and bewildered in equal measure. Yes, he was thirsty. Yes, he wanted water very badly. But that did not mean that he would drink somebody's urine, much less that of a terrifying chandalas. He began to curse Vishnu. Only much later that Uttanka finds out that the water he refused was not water. It was not urine. It was the nectar of the gods. It was Amrita. And it was not a hunter, not a chandala who had offered it to him. It was Indra himself. So Mutra Shanko Yathodanko Nagrahidamritam Munihi. Just as Sage Uttanka did not accept nectar, he refused Amrita because he mistook it for urine. Karma Nasha Bhayad Jantor Atmajnana Grahastatha. So too, people refuse the nectar of Atmavidya. They don't accept it because they're afraid to give up the life they know, give up their attachments to their duties, their responsibilities. Karmanasha bhayat. Shankaracharya is addressing a very fundamental question here. Why are we not really interested in Atmavidya? Why is it that we don't really want it? And I'm not simply talking about worldly people who may be completely ignorant about the very existence of Atmavidya. I'm also talking about us, about you and me, we who study Shankara Bhashya, we who celebrate Shankara Jayanti, we who know, or at least claim to know, the value of Atmavidya. Do we really want Atmavidya? If we are absolutely honest with ourselves, can we say that we want Atmavidya, that we are ready to do what it takes to attain this knowledge, that we are 100% prepared for it? No, we're not. At best, we use it to derive a certain strength from it, a certain courage, fortitude maybe, and at worst, we use it to advance our careers, we use it to strengthen the ahankara, to somehow feel that we're better than the rest of the world, going about their business, ignorant about this aspect of life, that somehow we're above them. This is quite disgusting. Why is this? Why is it that we don't really want Atmavidya? Even those of us who claim to know the value of Atmavidya don't really want it. Why is this? Shankaracharya says, Karma Nasha Bhayat. It is because of fear of giving up life as we know it, fear of giving up our attachments particularly to our identity. The commentary says, Varnashramopadhi vihita karma nasha bhayat atmadhyana graha jantor utpadyate. Karma here is not simply action in general. It is varnashramopadhi vihita karma, which is basically synonymous with the sense of identity that we derive from the roles that we play in society. It is to this identity that we're attached. And to lose it means to lose ourselves. And this is what we're most afraid of. Mandukya Karika says, Yogino bipyati hyasmat abhaye bhayadarshinaha. Abhaye bhayadarshinaha. It is tragic that we're fearful of the only thing that can make us absolutely fearless. Moving on, the second and third shloka can be read together because they reiterate a similar point. Buddhisthashchalati vatma dhyayati vacha drishyate naugatasya yatha vrikshaha tadvat samsara vibhramaha. Translation is given in the text in the PPT. Atman, identified with the intellect, is seen as it were moving and at rest when the intellect moves and is at rest. Chalati vatma dhyayati vacha drishyate. The mistake about transmigratory experience, the impression that Atman transmigrates, samsara vibhramaha, is like that of a man in a moving boat, naugatasya, who thinks that it is the trees, the stationary trees along the shore which are moving. Naugatasya yatha vrikshaha tadvat samsara vibhramaha. I'll read the third shloka also, and we can discuss them together. Nausthasya pratilomyena naganam gamanam yatha atmanaha samsritistadvat dhyayati veti hishrutihi. Just as to a man in the boat, the trees appear to move in a direction opposite to his movement. Nausthasya pratilomyena naganam gamanam yatha atmanaha samsritihi tadvat. So does Atman appear to transmigrate, appear to move. Shankaracharya substantiates his statement with Shruti Pramana, Dhyayati Veti Shrutihi. This is a reference to a mantra in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which says, Yoyam Vijnanamayah Praneshu Hrudyantar Jyotihi Purushaha Sa Samanaha San Ubhau Loka Vanusancharati Dhyayativa Lelayativa. So Shankaracharya is referring to this particular phrase Dhyayati Veti Shrutihi, appearing to think, appearing to move about. This, in the final analysis, is what transmigration truly is, an appearance. In the Upadeasahasri, Shankaracharya refers to two types of transmigration, two types of samsara. Samsara is literally movement, samsarati, samsara. So two types of movements, A, from one body to another, and B, from one state of being to another. That is from waking to dream to sushupti. This is also understood validly as a type of transmigration in this text. Shankaracharya writes that the notion that the Atman moves at all is only an appearance. A very often asked question, at least in my class, especially with very young students, is about transmigration. If the self is nishchala, without movement, and it is all pervasive, then who or what transmigrates from one body to another? This is a repeatedly asked question. Why does Krishna tell Arjuna, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptehe dhirastatra nohyati? Why does he say this to him? Or the more famous Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani granhati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnananyani sayati navani dehi. Why does Krishna tell this to Arjuna? Does it mean that the Atman changes bodies like we change clothes? How can it do this if it is without movement and it is all pervasive? The two statements are contradictory. A thing cannot be all pervasive and yet move from one thing to another. What does it mean to say that the sky, the all pervasive sky, can move from one place to another? So how does this make sense? Of course, proper answer to this question would require another lecture in itself. Suffice to say that Prasthanatraya texts are not to be read in a very literal sense. They employ a very specialized, a very sophisticated technique called Adhyaropapavada in order to convey the truth about the self, about Brahman. And unless we know how to decode this technique, there is no way to solve these doubts. See, the words of the Prasthanatraya texts are ordinary words of everyday usage. But ordinary conventional words can only be used to describe ordinary familiar objects. How to use ordinary words to teach about Brahman, a reality that is beyond words, beyond language, beyond conception, a reality that possesses none of the characteristics of ordinary objects. How to use ordinary words to describe this extraordinary Brahman. So there are limits and difficulties in instructing about Brahman through words. But with all of their limitations, there is no avoiding of words. The Veda is constituted of words. So conventional ordinary words have to be used skillfully and in very special ways to overcome their limitations. Words can teach about Brahman, but only when employed in skillful ways to neutralize their finite meanings. So the Prasthanatraya texts skillfully employ words to teach Brahman. They employ a very sophisticated, a very specialized technique called Adhyaropapavada to teach about Brahman. Adhyaropapavada is a combined process of Adhyaropa and Apavada. Adhyaropa is superimposition, deliberated pedagogical superimposition of attributes upon Brahman. Deliberate means intentionally. Intentionally superimposing some attribute, some characteristics upon Brahman. Attributes that it does not possess, characteristics that don't describe Brahman. Intentionally superimposing such attributes and characteristics upon Brahman with the sole intention of removing natural. See, we unknowingly hold certain notions, certain ideas about Brahman, which are not true, which don't characterize Brahman. But we retain these ideas unknowingly, without awareness. So these are what are called as natural or undeliberated superimpositions. The deliberate superimpositions serve to remove these undeliberate superimpositions. This process of deliberately superimposing some characteristics upon Brahman is called Adhyaropa. This is the first step of the technique. The second step is Apavada, retraction of these very deliberated superimpositions. Whatever was superimposed must now be retracted. So the initial superimposition, Adhyaropa, serves to negate previously wrongly believed attributes of Brahman, and the retraction, Apavada, negates even these superimposed attributions. Two auxiliary rational procedures. This is how the Prasthanatraya texts work, a kind of linguistic game where each and every sentence of the texts is epistemologically relevant, not on account of what it intrinsically refers to, but on account of what it implicitly negates. Dvaita bhave shastra vyaparaha, na dvaite virodha. So when, for example, the text says explicitly, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptihi. When the text says this explicitly, it is not to say that Atman transmigrates from one body to another. This is not the intention of this shloka. This is not how it is supposed to be read. We have to discard the positive meaning that the sentence conveys and look for the particular misconception that it is targeting. What does it negate? What misconception does it remove? This is what we have to look for. Here, the idea of transmigration is deliberately superimposed upon Atman with the sole intention of establishing its avikriyatva. In his commentary on this particular shloka, Shankaracharya writes, Tasam prathamavasthanashe na nashaha. Dvitiyavasthopajane na upajananam atmanaha. Kim tarhi avikriyasyaiva dvitiya tritiyavastha praptihi. The idea that Atman transmigrates is adhyaropa. This is the first step of the procedure, of the technique. This adhyaropa is deliberately used in order to remove the misconception that Atman undergoes vikara. The idea that we are born, that we will die, is so strongly, so deeply rooted in us that we hold on to it unthinkingly, unintentionally. So in order to remove this natural, undeliberated misconception, the text deliberately superimpose samsara in Atman. By doing this, by situating the transmigration in Atman, these texts are limiting birth and death to the body only, and thereby pointing to Atman's avikriyatva. This superimposition will later be retracted. So we cannot read these texts without understanding how to decode them. This is why Shankaracharya said in the Gita itself, Gita Bhashya, 13th chapter, Tatha hi sampradaya vadam vachanam adhyaropapavadabhyam nishprapancham prapanchate. We don't have more time to discuss this technique in this elaborately. Also, I've discussed it elaborately elsewhere. So we'll come back to what Shankaracharya is saying in this particular shloka. Augatasya yatha vrikshaha tadvat samsara vibhramaha. And nausthasya pratilomyena naganam gamanam yatha atmanaha samsritihi tadvat. He's saying that ultimately transmigration is only an appearance. The movement is not in the Atman. The movement is only in what is in front of it. The self, the witness, beholds the movement in front of it and assumes that the movement is in itself. The way that the man on the boat sees the stationary trees on the shore and assumes that they are moving. Nausthasya navigachantyam tatasthesh magatishvapi nagesho pratikulyena gachanti vrikshaha iti kalpanam naugati viveka bhava nimitta vibhramat evam prakateti tyarthaha. Same logic that applies to movement between the different states of being, waking, dream, and dreamless sleep. Again, a very elaborate topic. Again, I've spoken at length about this elsewhere. So for now, suffice to say that the Atman does not move from one state of being to the other. The movement is only an appearance that is caused by aviveka. Interestingly, if I remember right, Sureshwaracharya also gives a very, very similar example in his Naishkarmya Siddhi. He says, avikriyasya bhoktritvam syadaham buddhi vibhramat nauyana vibhramat yatvan nageshu gati kalpanam. The words are very similar. The exact terminology is also employed by Sureshwaracharya. One of the reasons for determining Upadeasahasri as an undoubtedly authentic work of Shankaracharya is the fact that Sureshwaracharya quotes copiously from this particular work. There are other reasons, of course, but this is one of the primary reasons. Before we move on, there's another thing to notice here. I think it's very interesting to see how Shankaracharya always quotes the Shruti or the Smriti to substantiate his statements. So he ends this shloka with the Shruti Pramana, Dhyayati Vedhi Shruti. The importance that he gives to Sampradaya, to the Vedas, is simply unparalleled. In no other philosophical systems, even those that are quote unquote orthodox, do you find such emphasis, such deference to tradition, to the Vedas, barring Purvamimamsa, of course. But it's very beautiful how Shankaracharya is so respectful of the tradition, especially because, at least as far as Advaita Vedanta is considered, he does not have to absolutely rely on the Vedas to make his claims. Dharmajijnasayam eva shrutyadaya eva pramanam brahmajijnasayam. It is only in the Adhyasa Bhashya that he does not cite the Shruti or Smriti at all. Adhyasa Bhashya is entirely logical, rational, drawing attention to the reader's experience, completely without reference to the Vedas. But here he does this to prove a point, to show that Advaita Vedanta is completely within the realm of your experience. You do not require to believe in the Upanishads for it to work. No, all that you need to do is to understand what the Upanishads are saying and verify that in your own experience. In Shankaracharya himself writes, he says, Atmajnanam na pramana siddham, kintu pramana vyapratehe purvameva svanubhava gamyam. Pramanadi vyavaharope atmajnanam anubhava siddham ashrityaiva pranan dharati. Moving on, the fourth shloka reads like this. Chaitanya pratibimbena vyapto bodho hi jayate buddhe shabdadi nirbhasaha tena momuhyate jagat. Because buddhi, the modifications of the intellect, is pervaded by the reflections of pure consciousness, knowledge arises in it. And so it is that sound and other objects of the sense organs appear or are perceived. And by this, people are deluded. Tena momuhyate jagat. Shankaracharya is saying that because we have the capacity to perceive, to understand, to know, to be aware, because we possess this capacity, we are fooled into thinking that we are independent individuals. But he clarifies that this capacity does not belong to the buddhi. It does not belong to the instruments of perception. It belongs only to the self. It is because of the self that we're able to perceive, we're able to know. Again, this is a topic that draws a maximum number of questions in my class. Very interesting questions. Questions like, if the capacity of awareness belongs to the self, and the self is all pervasive, then why does, say, a piece of stone not possess the same capacity for awareness that a human being does? If the self is all pervasive, and the capacity for awareness has absolutely nothing to do with the instruments of perception, then why do we see differences between individuals in their capacity to understand? Why are there more intelligent and less intelligent individuals, etc.? I don't know if any of you had such doubts, but to resolve these and all other such questions, we have to turn to the Avasthatraya Prakriya. A very thorough analysis of the three avasthas will suffice to answer any doubts that may arise. I cannot discuss it at length, but briefly, I didn't put this on the slide, I'll just explain it. If, for example, you take the Swapnavastha, the world that you see in the Swapnavastha is entirely created by you. It does not have an existence independent of you. This is very clear to each of us. You are the Upadana Karana, the Nimitta Karana, Sahakari Karana of the world that you see in your Swapnavastha. The material that the world is created out of is you. The objects that you see in it is you. The colors that you see, the smell, the taste, the touch, the feeling of it is all you. You created that entire world of Swapnavastha. Yet, in the Swapnavastha, you identify yourself with only one single body. Amongst your entire creation, you call only one body as yourself. The identification is with only that body, with that mind, with those instruments. You choose to be a subject and perceive everything else as objects. But everything is you. You created it. You may see non-living objects in your Swapnavastha, like stones, like mountains, like rivers. You may see living objects like birds and dragons. Whatever you see, living, non-living, intelligent, non-intelligent, does any of it take away from the fact that this is all you, that it is all your creation? No, it does not. It is all you. The capacity to see in your dreams, the capacity to understand, the capacity to know does not belong to that dream body, to that dream mind. No, it belongs to the self. Jagrat is exactly like that. And in Sushupti, where there is no world to be aware of, no play to watch, yet you are aware. Awareness exists whether the world exists or does not exist, whether this body, the mind exists or does not exist. Awareness exists. Nahi drashtu drishtehe viparilopo vidyate avinashitva. It's a very subtle topic. The only way to understand is to analyze the three thorough manner. Each state has to be examined from its own point of view, not from the point of view of the Jagrat. Well, that's a project for life, not the topic of this lecture. So coming back, we can read the 5th shloka. Chaitanyabhasatahamaha tadarthyanja tadasya yat idamamsha prahanena parahsonubhavo bhavet. Translation is given in the text. The I notion appears to be, as it were, pure consciousness, existing for its sake. It does not do so when the idam portion has been destroyed. So the pure experience which is other than idam is the highest Atman. This is a very, very subtle topic, the notion of I or I am. See, right at the beginning of his Adhyasa Bhashya, the very first sentence, Shankaracharya divides the entire world of experience into two components, Yushmat and Asmat. Yushmad Asmat Pratyaya Gocharayoho, Vishaya Vishayinoho, Tamah Prakasha Vidyodha Svabhavayoho, Iteretara Bhavanupapattau Siddhayam Tadharmanamapi Sutaram Iteretara Bhavanupapattihi. There are only two things in the world of experience, Tvam and Aham, you and I, or more precisely, not I and I. Yushmat and Asmat. The entire world of experience is divided like this. Idam falls under the category of Yushmat. It refers to everything that is not Aham, not the self. Here Shankaracharya is writing, Chaitanya bhasatam aham, Chaitanya bhasataham ha, tadarthyanja tadasya yat, idamamsha prahanena, parahsonu bhavo bhavet. He says the notion of I, Aham, exists simultaneously with Idam. Aham does not exist when the Idam is not there. What exists when both Aham and Idam are not there is what is the self. It's a very nuanced topic. I'll try to say as much as possible. Again, I've spoken elsewhere about it. So just for the completion of the talk, the notion of I am, is the crux of the matter here. This Purana, this pulsation of I am, is perhaps the purest manifestation of that Brahman. It is not Brahman itself. There's a lot of confusion about this. The notion, the Purana of I am, is not Brahman, but it is the first, the purest manifestation of that Brahman. Shankaracharya writes, say you have lost your cow. You have lost your cow. What do? You look for it with the help of the footprints that the cow has left behind. You follow the footprints until you find the cow. Yatha havai loke padena gavadi purankito deshaha padamityuchyate. Tena padena nashtam vivitsitam pashum padena anveshamano nuvindel labheta evamatma. So too the notion of I or I am is the footprint of that Brahman. You follow it until you find Brahman. You don't need it afterwards, but you hold on to it until you do. This is why the Jnanis like Nisargadatta Maharaj, Ramana Maharshi, they said time and again, they said, cling on to the one thing that matters. Hold on to I am, let go of all else. This notion of I am, is momentary. It is a pulsation, a spurana that is momentary, that arises and fades away every moment so quickly that it appears constant. With the rising of the I, the world comes into play, whether in the Jagrat or Swapna. And in the state of dreamless sleep, in Sushupti, there is no I, and therefore there is no world. In Sushupti, in deep sleep, it is not that you're unaware or unconscious. No, it is just that there is no I, and therefore there is no world to know. Awareness exists, but there is no thing to be aware of. Awareness is prior to the feeling I am. Describing the state, Shankaracharya says in his Brahadanika Bhashya, Nahi drashtuhu drishtehe viparilopo vidyate avinashitvat natu. It is not that witnessing consciousness is not there in Sushupti. Why? Avinashitva. Because awareness is, consciousness is, does not come and go. Kintarhi. There is no second thing to be aware of. Natu tad dvitiyamasti tatonyat vibhaktam yat pashyata. Because there is no aham, no I, There is no world. With the rising of the I, the world comes into play. When the I is not, the world is not. This is exactly what Shankaracharya is referring to in this shloka when he says, Idam amsha prahanena parah sonubhavo bhavev. What exists when both aham and idam are not there. This is what is the true nature of the self. And this experience is available to each and every one of us. It is the experience of Sushupti, a stateless state in which there is no aham, no pulsation of I am. There is no idam, no world to know. No aham, no idam, but still you exist. The self is available to us in its pure form, free from any conditioning factor in the state of Sushupti. The state of Sushupti is not really a state at all. It is the being, the pure consciousness, the ground of existence, and it is here available here and now. You don't need a recourse to Turiya, Turiyatita, Turiyatita, Titita. Even the term Turiya is only an adhyaropa. It is a deliberate pedagogical superimposition. It is not to be taken literally. There is no separate state of the self called Turiya. This is why time and again Brahmana Maharshi would say, ask yourself this, did you or did you not exist in a state of Sushupti? Were you there or were you not there? Ask yourself this. If you find an answer to this, you've solved the biggest puzzle of life itself. So in this shloka, Shankaracharya very characteristically is touching upon a very important, a very nuanced topic. In just a matter of 5 shlokas, he has brought in many aspects of Advaita Vedanta. Each shloka so deep, so philosophically profound, we could discuss it for hours. But my time is up, so I will conclude my talk with my favorite shloka. It's an obeisance that Sureshwaracharya pays to Shankaracharya in his Naishkarmya Siddhi. Vishnoho padanugam yan nikhila bhavanudam shankaro vapayogat sarvajñam brahma samstham munigana sahitam samyak abhyarcha bhaktya vidyam gangam vaham pravara guna nidhehe prapya vedanta deeptam karunya tamavocham jani mruti nivahadvastaye dukkhitebhyaha. As Shiva bears the weight of the Ganga on his head, Ganga flowing from Vishnu's pada, bringing it safely to earth, so Shankaracharya has brought down that lofty Upanishadic knowledge to us. I koti pranama to him. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to.
Yeah. And yes, we would like to first give some priority to students if there are any among the audience, obviously. Researchers also are welcome, but if there are any students of Vedanta or Advaita Vedanta or Indian philosophy in general, and if you have any question, you can please request you to unmute yourself or raise your hand and ask your question. Okay, right. So we'll go in order then. Ms. Venkataramanji, you can go first. You can unmute yourself and go.
Namaste.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that wonderful talk. At the beginning of the talk, you mentioned that Upadeasahasri is the only independent work apart from the Bhashyas of Shankaracharya. I would think that Dakshinamurti Stotram also will be an independent work of Shankaracharya for no other reason than the fact that Sureshwaracharya has written a commentary on that. Your views, please.
There's a little bit of contestation about the fact about whether it is Sureshwaracharya himself who has written the Bhashya on Dakshinamurti Stotra. So there is a little bit of dispute on that. It is not established beyond doubt. That is the only reason that I'm just limiting myself to only that which has been established without doubt to be that of Shankaracharya. But I mean, the Dakshinamurti Stotra is as profound. It could be Shankaracharya's. I'm in agreement with you. I'm just talking academically here. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sindhuja, and then after that, Ganesh Shastri can go. Yeah, Sindhuja, please unmute yourself.
Namaste, Manjushree Hegde. This is from the perspective of spiritual intelligence. So like most of the scholars and from the West, they speak about spirituality and spiritual intelligence as one of
You have to, you're not audible. Could you please keep the mic closer to? Yeah.
Am I audible now? Namaste,
Yes.
Manjushree Hegde. So this is about the concern about what is your take on understanding self? Most of the scholars and experts from West talk about spiritual intelligence as a ways of means of understanding self. So when we moment where how far today's Shankara's point of view, the four levels of knowing the true self in absence of conditioning. So what the spiritual intelligence, what's your take on it? Like how far that is being able to express, or does it explains completely, or where are the gaps?
Thank you so much for the question, but I'm not entirely sure that I've understood what you mean, because I've not really come across this term in any of the academic writings. Spiritual intelligence, I don't know if it's used formally or informally. I'm understanding it as in terms of a refinement, maybe. Would I be right? A certain capacity or a certain...
Yes, it is an ability of understanding self and going beyond. So that's how
Right.
the experts define.
Okay. So it makes sense to me, in a sense that while the possibility of moksha is available for each and every one of us, it's not that simple or easy also. We have to admit that, otherwise we would all be enlightened by now. But it takes a certain amount of refinement. It takes a certain amount of evolution. Should I say that? I don't know if I can use the word, but... sorry? So, well, yeah, it makes sense to me to call it maybe spiritual intelligence if you're defining it in terms of the progress that you have already achieved in your path towards the goal. But it still does not deny the fact that it is available to every one of us, no matter how far the path still available here and now. So.
Ganesh Shastri, you can go on now. Please unmute yourself.
Namaskaram, Manjushree ji. As always, thank you for this excellent, clear talk. I have a small query with respect to verse 4. Chaitanya pratibhimbena vyapto bodho hi jayate. Now, I'm not versed in Sanskrit, but the point is, on a very cursory reading, it talks about modifications of the intellect pervaded by reflection of consciousness when they come to exist. Now, does it lead to this Pratibhimbavada, which then again somewhere leads to this theory of Mula Vidya and so on? Of course, one would always say that, why are you trying to confound yourself with those aspects? The idea is to focus on Brahman, yes, but the mind is very, like a monkey, it wants to grab to this bone. So just wanted your view on that.
Sure. This is actually a very important question, in the sense that throughout the texts, not just the Upadeasahasri, you will find a lot of references to this reflection talk. And this is also the reason why I feel that the Bhamatikara was able to build his whole theory of his definition of the relation of the Jiva and Brahman as, Bimba Pratibhimbavada. But like I said again, the texts are not to be read literally. Positive meaning is not what the texts aim at conveying, and a lot of the differences in opinions is because you are taking the words to mean that you're looking only at the positive meaning that the sentences are conveying. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Mula Vidya debate. I'm a follower of Sachidananda Saraswati tradition, and Swami always said that what it is pointing to is not what you're supposed to look at. You're supposed to look at what it is negating. So the moment you hold on to the very gross literal meaning of the sentences, you're bound to go wrong. This is sort of the reason I feel that a lot of it has happened. If you read it literally, there's a lot of such examples can be multiplied innumerably. You will find, especially the Bimba Pratibhimbavada, you'll find so many examples of this particular example used in all the texts. So yes, you're right. If it's, I mean, this is entirely possible to read it like that, but I belong to the tradition that says this is not the right reading. So
thank you, Manjushree ji, because only recently I got hooked on to Swamiji's works through the forum, and now whatever I read, whichever translation, actually comes across only from the perspective that he is given. So that is why I had to kind of bring this not a polemic debate, just to understand what it is. Thank you for it.
Thank you so much for the question.
I'd like to know from my hosts and co-hosts, and perhaps you can check in your chat box, Manjushree ji, if you have any questions in the chat, because we had enabled chat only to co-hosts and co-hosts. So in case you want to take any of the questions, you are free to do that.
I think there's one question about the Pratikmavada, which I think.
Okay. Sure. Okay, I will take advantage of my position as the host, and I'll ask one question about the last part where you had said that the aham and tvam exist simultaneously in the realm of existence. Somehow I felt that the aham must precede the tvam, isn't it? Epistemically, the aham must be prior to tvam. So what do you think about it?
Well, we cannot really talk about prior and thing is, it's not, we're not really dealing with it in a time period kind of a framework. No? We're talking about
Well, logically.
Okay, logically, yes, you could say that it must be prior to idam, but the idea is that the two are simultaneous in a sense that it does not exist without the idam. Maybe you could still give a proposition, a logical proposition, where you say that there must be a position of aham just before the rising of the idam, but experientially it is not known like that. It's understood that in Sushupti there is no aham and therefore no idam. So yes, you could talk about it like that maybe, but that would just be a logical, fair enough. I mean,
and I'd like to point out that this analogy that he has taken, that when a person is going on the boat, the trees seem to go on the other way. Very strangely, this has been, the same analogy has been used by Aryabhatta in Aryabhatiya to propose that it is possible that the earth is going around the sun. So I am very much surprised to see the same analogy coming in two completely different shastras to prove completely different.
Oh, that is very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that. Okay.
Yes. So if there are no further questions,
with your kind permission, if there is time, may I speak in a small question?
Yeah, please be precise.
Manjushree ji, it was very interesting to note towards the end when you talked about the Aham as being the first vibration from the unmanifest Brahman. And you did mention about Nisargadatta Maharaj and Ramana Maharshi, who have copiously, repeatedly talked about the same, yet, quote unquote, the method remains a mystery, be in that I am. And then there is this other aspect that for moksha, Vedanta is the only way, right? Okay, now when you, even a cursory reading of what they say and, the Vedanta Vakyas seem to be just about the same. So the question is Shravana, Manana, Nididasana the only way? Of course, it is a method. One cannot deny that there is a very clear methodology given in the Vedantic process. But with these enlightened masters who are not Shrotriya, who are probably like Vamadeva, who just got it directly, when they say this is enough, I mean, how do we reconcile?
Honestly speaking, I'm not seeing a contradiction in the two. What Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta Maharaj are saying are, I mean, it's a very direct method. If you're also interested in understanding, I mean, I'm not entirely sure I understood the question completely, as in there's a first part to it to the second. If you're talking only about Ramana Maharshi and the direct method of just holding on to I am, we don't see a reference to this particular method like this in the Upanishads and the Prasthanatraya. I agree with that. But I feel like this was maybe his contribution. It's a very direct way. While the idea is there throughout the Upanishads, where Shankaracharya is saying over and over again about this aham pratyaya. In fact, the whole of Adhyasa Bhashya is entirely dedicated to this. It's to understand what the aham pratyaya and the how it works really. The entire thing is about that. So, but he's not given it as a method. He's never said, hold on to I am there. You're not in those terms exactly. So you could say that Ramana Maharshi's and Nisargadatta Maharaj is more often comes from a more experiential place, as in their own experience. That's what I mean when I say experiential. But I don't really see a contradiction, because that method is still there everywhere. It's just strewn about it throughout the Upanishads, but not in a direct manner, but it's there, definitely there. And Shravana Manana Nididhyasana, again, to simply hold on to I am, it's not something that you can do unprepared. It requires a certain groundwork. You're coming from a place of nothing, then you need a lot of just hearing the the musings of the Upanishads. You need a little bit of contemplation, and only then can you really, practice anything. So I don't see the two as contradictory, but it could still. I think both of it are really pointing to the same thing. So both are necessary, is what I feel. I'm not entirely sure if I answered.
Many thanks. Adhyatma Yoga, Swamiji, Sachidananda Saraswati Swamiji actually refers to Ramana when it comes to Atma Pratyaya in the introduction, if I'm not mistaken. So I was always worried, not worried, but how can they be wrong? How can one say they are not enlightened? Not that support their enlightenment, but it gives a sense of reinforcement. That's all, for whatever it means. Thanks a lot for that.
Can I come in with a question, please?
Sir, please keep it short and precise.
Very short, very short. Is there any standard text of Swami Sachidanandra Saraswati where we can get to know more about his views and his approach to Advaita?
So he's written a lot of texts. Literally, his publication must be about 230 in Kannada, in English, and in Sanskrit. So depending on what language you're comfortable with, his Sanskrit works are very precise. They're beautiful. The English is a little bit watered down. English and Kannada a bit watered down. So if you're comfortable with Sanskrit, you could go with something like Vedanta Prakriya Pratyabhijna, Mula Vidya Nirasaha. These are his magnum opus, and he has translated all of Shankaracharya's Bhashya into Kannada. If you can read Kannada, English works. It's very there are a lot of introductory books in English. There's one called Avasthatraya Prakriya itself. In Kannada, there is Paramartha Chintamani and Avasthatraya Chandrike. There are lots of options. I would suggest you go directly to the Sanskrit text if you're comfortable with that. But otherwise, there's I think
I'm learning Sanskrit, so not yet in a position to.
Okay.
Anything you can suggest of English? I'm not conversant with Kannada.
Okay. So Vedanta, the Science of Reality, is by his guru, K.A. Krishnaswamy Iyer. That is also a fantastic work. His Swami's introduction, the foreword to this book itself, is very beautiful. It's very clear. Everything that he has to say, he has sort of written it in the foreword to that particular book, Vedanta, the Science of Reality. Apart from that, he has written salient not able to get the exact title, but everything is actually available online. I could just maybe give you Ganesh Shastriji has actually given the link in the chat box. All his works are available for download in that particular website. You could just take a look at it and download his English works. There's a lot of very small introductions, very on particular topics. He has taken a very small topics and written, everything that you need to do about that particular topic will be there in that particular book. So say there's misconceptions about Shankara. Then there is something like about Brahma Sutra Bhashya, the first 4 sutras, he's given the translation, and you can take a look at what's that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Raghavanji.
Hello. Yeah. I hope you can hear me. Sorry, my computer suddenly did something. So thank you very much, Manjushree ji, for introducing us to the Mutra Shankha Prakarana. It was a new topic for me, and taking us through a very small module, let us say, which can very aptly chosen topic, I must say. Before I invite my director, Vinay Chandra ji, for the vote of thanks, I request the audience to please turn on their video so that we can take a screenshot for our records for these kinds of formalities. So I request everyone to please turn on their videos. Yes, I request my colleague Dr. Pejataya to join me in the same. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. With that, I now invite the director of the Center for Indian Knowledge Systems, Chanakya University, Dr. Vinay Chandra ji, to please deliver the vote of thanks. Sir, over to you.
Sabhaye Namaha, Sabhasabhyo Namaha. I always feel remembering about Shankara, talking about Shankara, listening to Shankara is always a matter of light and delight. I mean, it's just joy in every word that he has written, every line that he has composed. Nandati, Nandati, Nandatyeva. I mean, this is the kind of joy that you get out of self-revelation. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So it's been an absolute joy to think about him anytime, any day, anywhere, whichever part of the world you are. But more so on a day dedicated to him, our fond remembrances, pranams to that great soul, that towering personality who showed what heights intellect can reach. So, and what better day for us at the Center for Indian Knowledge Systems at Chanakya University to start our public reach out programs in the format of this particular talk. There will be many more such events, courses, programs that will follow from this point onwards. But this was in a way sort of a soft launch for the activities of Center for Indian Knowledge Systems at Chanakya University. I'm really grateful to Ms. Manjushree Hegde for accepting our invitation and delivering this scholarly talk, though scholarly, yet made it accessible to everyone. I mean, this is the beauty of Shankara, right? He treats a very profound subject, but while treating that profound subject, he also keeps in mind the requirements of a beginner, right? And to make it accessible. I think this is all the beauty about that. The knowledge is profound, but you make it accessible. And I think Manjushree Hegde's presentation made full justice to this particular topic, especially on the small section of Upadeasahasri. Thank you, Manjushree ji, for this presentation. We look forward to more such interactions and presentations in the days to come. We are extremely grateful. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank all the friends who have joined us from different parts of the country, perhaps from outside as well on this occasion, and my colleagues and friends at Chanakya University, at CES, the sponsoring body, and various related organizations and sister organizations at CES. So I once again thank everyone who have joined us, and also would like to share the commitment of Chanakya University, as Raghavanji said in the beginning, that one of the primary commitments of this university is to bring in the wisdom of the Indian tradition and infuse with the current day academics, so that we make the best of both the worlds, the contemporary world with all its progress, yet which is firmly based, rooted on the wisdom, thousands of years of civilizational wisdom that India possesses. So this is the primary commitment of Chanakya University. And in this background, all our courses, whichever course it might be, in whichever area or domain it might be, all the courses will have an element of Indian wisdom. So this is our commitment, and we request all of you to join us in this journey and continue this journey along with us. So once again, grateful to my colleagues, especially from the communication department, also Suresh Rajuji and many others for facilitating this event here. So with this gratitude to everyone and to the divine, and pranams to Acharya Shankara for what he has bestowed us with, I would like to bring this session to an ending. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. We'll just close with the Shanti mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for joining. See you again on some other event of the Center for Indian Knowledge Systems, Chanakya University. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.